All right, welcome back to another episode of Local 591 Video Podcast. My name is Pete Caruso. I'm Local 591 Vice President. Today I have Local 591 President Gary Scheibel, Administrative E-Board Russ Dittmer, and MLS E-Board Mike Zersky. They make up our Local 591 Negotiating Committee, alongside 4 other TWU reps, 7 IAM reps. I can tell you that for the past 10 months, they have put in an extraordinary amount of time preparing for the Section 6 openers that incidentally were supposed to be held here at the Local 591 office in Grapevine yesterday and today. Of course, that is not going to take place due to the association news and announcement of exploring an extension. So we're going to hear a little bit from them on their thoughts on what's going on so they can notify our members. And I'll start with you, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. So like Pete said, we were supposed to be negotiating this week. The last time we met as a full committee in person would be July 23rd, 24th, 25th. And then on July 26th, we were notified by the association leadership that the company wants to have a conversation regarding an extension. So kind of leading into this, I mean, we've spent the better part of 9-10 months now prepping, enormous amount of time prepping. I mean, it's we are fully prepared, full text at this point, to go forth with Section 6 negotiations. So, kind of mixed feelings on getting into an extension, but I get it if it's, if the extension is right. One thing that, we were told were, the extension would be economic. And then we were told that the economics is strictly wages. So that's kind of the word that we got via Zoom call with our international rep, Raleigh Reeves, and the IM's international district president, John Coveney. So that's what led us to not having negotiations here in this building this week. Canceled their negotiations that would have been 2 weeks from now. And now we're talking extension. So the extension conversation, originally we were told it was going to be August 26th. Now we hear it's actually the 27th and maybe the 28th. And from there, we have a lot of questions about the extension.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So here we are. Negotiating committee has been at it for 10 months. We've been going through articles, article by article. And I know that these 3 guys here have been working very hard on making sure that we, get all the proposals together that we got from our members to try to be ready to negotiate. And I can tell you, as the vice president for the local here, I have my issues and my struggles with the current agreement on getting an arbitration or the enforcement of this contract, and to be just thinking in my head of another 2 years of that, or 3 years, or whatever the extension would prove, would also create some issues that we've been having as far as the grievances go with this agreement. So I can tell you, a lot of our members are asking, hey, what does this entail? So we don't know right now, but I'll ask Brother Dittmer on the work that's been done so far, and what was your role in the negotiations?
So we started prepping for negotiations in September of last year. Frankly, TWU Local 591, and especially this board, started prepping well before that. Right after this contract, the JCBA was signed on March 26th of 2020. Anytime any question came up of how to interpret the contract or conflicts within the contract, the e-board members, the local stewards, the chairman around the system, they would reach out to the executive board saying, hey, we're looking for an answer on this, or we're looking for an answer on that. those questions that we could not answer readily, we started tracking. Along with that, when we got closer to negotiations, we sent out to the membership a survey asking them what was important to them. Between the information that we've gotten over the last 4 years, plus all the surveys, we're looking at 2,500, 3,000 surveys, plus 50 or 60 pages of questions that remain for us to identify and understand what the final answer should be when we renegotiate. Since that point in time, we've met with the internal TWU negotiation committee and then also met with the IEM. Through that process, I broke down all 4 of the agreements that we're going to be working on as the M&R committee and the MLS committee, and that's the M&R book, the MTS book, Maintenance Training Specialist, the MCT book, the Maintenance Control Technicians, and the MLS book, Material Logistics Specialist book. Each one of them we broke down by article and LOM. So for example, in the M&R book, going off the top of my head, I believe there are a total of 43 actual articles with the .1, .2 and 14, and I believe one other 26.1, and 20 LOMs. So breaking those down into identifiable articles and identifiable documents, Word documents separate. Every time we worked on any of those and we changed any of the verbiage in any of them, we updated it that day with a new file name, and the new file name was that day. So it would be M&R Article 1, and then the year, month, and date, so that we could track everything that was changed all the way across the board to make sure we're capturing what our members want, to make sure we're capturing the better language. And to speak to your point for a second, Pete, on grievance process. Something happened this time around. Gary and I were talking about this that I don't believe has ever happened before. We literally brought the vice presidents in of the 3 primary locals for the TWU who own grievances and said, hey, what's wrong with the grievance process in the book and how can we fix it? We spent a couple of days looking at different articles, different contracts all along, and we really built a better structure that we presented to the IEM. And frankly, the IEM negotiating committee overall looked at it and they were pleased with the fact that we found what we believe is a much stronger, much more enforceable grievance process moving forward. And that's thanks to the vice presidents. We would never have been able to get there without them. But all those documents compiled are, ready to go. So we've talked about the fact that we may be seeing an economic extension, but from our perspective, one of the priorities, Gary, myself, Mike Bush, before Mike Jazerski came on board as the MLS executive board member and negotiating committee member, was to make sure that if there was, in fact, the possibility of an extension when we started, all of this work that we did already can be given to the next negotiating committee, and they won't have to start rebuilding the wheel or start from scratch.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the explanation. So you mentioned that our old former executive board MLS member who Mike Bush, who had retired, and Mike Jazerski took over. So I'll ask Mike, as far as the negotiations, the time that you spent there, what enhancements, some key enhancements did you see for the MLS group?
For the MLS group, like I said, I came in April. They have been negotiating prior to that, going over article by article. But going through the articles and really getting into the information to go ahead and better tech crew chiefs, better the crew chiefs, better the language for a lot of the MLS book, to go ahead, and the main struggle was getting our qualifications back. Getting our qualifications back, getting an MLS test back to go ahead and keep our class and craft where it's at, to go ahead and keep on moving forward, so we are able to go ahead and keep on increasing in our pay rates and keep on moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you. So just to point out some of the things that the negotiating committee out of our local, the 3 members, working very hard at it. So let's get into the actual extension and what the association put out, this meeting that's supposed to, I know the publication says 26 and 27, but I'm hearing it's going to be the 27th, 28th of August.
Yes,
That's what we've been told.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Gary, as the president, can you give us your thoughts on what is going to actually take place at this meeting, from what you know?
So from what we hear, at least what we're told. I mean, it's the company was not interested in fixing some of the easy things that there's a lot of things that we can put behind us. I mean, we're dealing with this list of 32 items for that. For the most part, we have agreement on. It's just a matter of formalizing it and and putting it to bed. So we hear that they're not interested in talking about anything other than wages. The company, that is. So I would expect that this is going to be just a wage proposal that's put across the table with a term. Now let me get into term, because from what we hear from our leadership, it won't be any more than 2 years. And then we also were told that we should expect at the very least the top in the industry in wages, along with the continual promises of whenever we sign a contract. And we all heard this. I mean, we can play the videos on here if we wanted to. There's lots of them, but whenever we sign a contract, this is American Airlines executive speaking, it's going to be the top in the industry plus 3% minimum. So from an expectation part, that the wages that come across the table, since the company apparently has chosen to do wages only, would be, at a minimum, those numbers, industry's best plus 3%. And that's why we put out that level of detail. Kind of the other thing is what is the makeup of the room as far as who's attending? So let me get into that, because initially we got word that the negotiating committees would not be there in the room. Kind of crazy one, because you have a negotiating committee. We just spent all this time prepping. We know the contracts. We're the experts. If there's going to be something handed across the room from a company negotiating committee, you would think that it would go to a union negotiating committee. That we were told was not the case. Getting a little deeper into that, most of us in the TWU have bylaws that state, us included, that the lead negotiator will include the local president. We were initially told that was not going to be the case. Since then, we were assured last week by Air Division Director Andre Sutton. We had a officers meeting out in Denver last week where we met with them, spent probably a good hour and a half out of this 2-hour meeting discussing negotiations. And we're assured that his expectation for this meeting at this point is that the negotiating committees will be in the room, but by God, one way or another, the local presidents will be in the room to receive this offer from American.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation. So, will the membership get a chance to vote on this?
Yeah. So what we are told, since there would be a change in the term, and the term being the length of the contract. So let me just kind of walk you through what an extension would look like. So our contract right now is amendable on March 26th of 2025. So roughly about 7 months away from when we're doing this video. What the extension would do is bring the term out to March 26th of 2027 if it was a 2-year extension. Obviously, if it was an 18-month, it would change depending upon what is actually agreed to. That would be when the date of the contract becomes amendable, we moved out. So since there is a change in the amendable date, there would be require a vote by the membership. If the company just decided on August 27th that, hey, we just want to hand out a whole boatload of money and keep the amendable date March 26th of 2025, then there wouldn't be a need to actually do a vote, because it's not like the union was going to, or the membership would turn down a boatload of money. But that's a good dream for a different day. That's not going to happen. So that said, we were also told as a negotiating committee that we would decide whether or not this would go out to the membership after it was received by the negotiating committee from the company.
Okay, so just just to be clear for the members, is the negotiating committee consists of 7 IAM and 7 TWU, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so it would actually go to the negotiating committee first to review, and then they would make the decision whether it comes back to the members or not.
Correct.
That's how it was explained to us. Yes.
Okay, so along with that, and I'll ask Russ. Along with that, so if the membership felt what has Local 591 done to make sure the members are aware and educated on wages and what's the industry standard at the moment?
So a while back, Gary, Mike, and myself started talking about what really are the industry standard wages today. Today, obviously, being a moving target. And we decided to look at all of the collective bargaining agreements that we could locate throughout the industry for the different work groups, whether it's MTS, MLS, MCT, Planner, and try and compile what the wages are throughout the larger airlines today, and use those kind of as the benchmark so that our members understand where the industry is today. Because frankly, it is a little scary that we have so many people that are not aware what the industry standard is today. So what we did was we built a chart and broke down the starting wage, top out wage for as many of the contracts as we could locate in the industry for all of the different work groups. One of the challenges with that, of course, is, for example, Delta Airlines, it's very difficult to get wage information or benefit information for that matter because they're non-union for the work groups that we represent at Local 591. Along with that, Gary and myself spent an ungodly weekend working through all of the different medical benefits programs that are listed in JetNet. Gary did the heavy lifting on that one, to be fair, and we really tried to build an explanation of what the medical value is between the current legacy AA medical benefits that we receive for the core plan, and then compared those to the legacy US 80/20 plan that's still in the contract. At that point, I'm going to hand it over to Gary to talk about the medical side of it. But for the wage side of it, just remember it's a spectrum, number one. And number two, Robert Isom and Doug Parker both have promised in videos that whenever we get to a contract, we're going to be 3% above the industry best at that point in time. Gary?
Yeah, so on the medical part, that's a common question. I mean, every meeting, and God, we're just doing a lot of meetings lately, and every single time is there is a disparity in medical cost between those that are in the legacy American Airlines plans, whether they're newer IAM members or they're longtime TWU members, and those that are in primarily the PPO 80 that the IAM folks that were here prior to the ratification that JCBA have. And trying to get a number of exactly what that cost difference is, because you got to look at the plan design, whether or not the coverage is, it's much like, homeowners insurance. If you live in Florida, do you have hurricane insurance? That will, makes a difference. The same thing in, Texas here, where hail damage, do you have full coverage for that? So what is their plan versus what our plans are? And, there is a lot of information out there, and most of the information actually you can find on JetNet. So we put together a chart that really looks and breaks it down from the AA core to the AA standard to the plus plan to the high cost plan, and different situations. So pregnancy, chronic illness like diabetes, to a simple fracture, or even just your normal annual exam, and comparing the cost difference. And in almost every, if not every category, there is a significant amount of money that are saved by those on the PPO 80. That's nothing against them on the PPO 80. That's what's in the contract now. It's just as an organization, as a union, the amount of money that you bring home should be equal. If you're working side by side with somebody, unless you chose to say go to the high cost plan and chose to cost yourself some more money than you needed to, it should be an option for all. So either the PPO 80 is an option for all, or the dollar value that's we're missing in our pockets compared to those that are on that plan needs to be equalized. I mean, that's just simple math. Everybody should be bringing home the same amount of value in their wallet.
Well, appreciate that. So I can tell you, Gary and Russ work very hard on these charts, and I appreciate it, and the executive board and all the members. So where could a member go and find these charts right now?
So what we did was we originally decided that we were going to try and send it out to the members, and it got kind of confusing. So what we decided to do is post it on our website, www.local591.com. It's on the homepage at the top on two links. One is the wage comparison, and the other right next to it is going to be the benefits comparisons. They're available to anyone. We didn't see any point or value in kind of hoarding this information. We wanted to be out there for everyone to be able to make an intelligent decision, regardless of whether we were going into contract regular Section 6 negotiations, whether we were doing some form of a hybrid or a contract extension.
Excellent. So this information can be accessed only by Local 591 members?
No, so like most of the same, our objective is to get the information out to all. So it's not behind the firewall in our contract. In our website, it's right there at the top. And I can tell you, a lot of the folks from the IAM, they've taken it. They've thanked us for doing it and sending it out to their folks, just so everybody knows what is the industry best, because there's a lot of misnomers out there on what people are making at different airlines. So, if I could just for a second, I mean, there's a number that you'll see on the one page of 6866 for an AMT. So what that is what United Airlines mechanics turned down. So they would have been at 6866. Built into that 6866 is $1.20 an hour that they get for Viva Trust. That is a money that's automatically given to them with every hour worked towards medical cost, just to keep their medical costs lower. Something that we don't have. So otherwise, that number would have been 67.46, which is 1 penny more than what Southwest mechanics are going to make. So, it's real money, $1.20 an hour. We need to capture it. So that's why that number is there. It's 68.66 would be the current best in the industry. Granted, they shut that number down. They turned it down because a couple things. One, they were trying to get a 4-year extension out of them. And they were definitely not interested in a 4-year extension. That's not an extension, that's a contract. So, and from what I hear from their negotiating committee already, they're definitely looking at a number higher than that, and in their current round of negotiations.
And to add on to that, if I recall, the conversation we had with them recently was they were going to get close to that number anyway at the end of this year. So the extension really wouldn't have had any tangible dollar value for the short term for them.
Yeah, they have an industry comparator, and that's how they level load their wages on an annual basis.
I appreciate that. Very good, good job on that. So let me ask you: and I understand this to be true. Our actuary economist, Mr. Pantoja, and Gary, I'll ask you as the president: have you talked to him? What's his take on the charts?
That was actually an interesting conversation that happened in front of quite a few people last week. He took one look at the charts and did the math on it, and then says they are extremely accurate on both ends. The numbers that we're putting out there for wages, and also the numbers that we're putting out there for medical. And I can also tell you that the folks over at American, the wage numbers, they're not contesting that those are the real numbers.
Great, excellent job, and us like Local 591 e-board, we want all the members to get educated on this and review the charts. Getting back to the extension and getting back to the meeting that's going to take place on the 27th, 28th. And I'll ask you, Gary, as the president, because I know our 591 bylaws state that the president is to be our lead negotiator for. So what is your take as far as this meeting taking place and you being in the room?
The expectation is that, well, for me, the expectation is not just me in the room, but the two folks next to me, along with the other 11 negotiators, are in the room. There's no reason for things to be done in secrecy. So that's the expectation. At a minimum, just like we said, and actually last week, we got quite the education from our legal folks on you must follow your bylaws. So inside of that, there should be no question whatsoever about the local presidents being in the room. And if nothing else, it puts to bed conspiracies and rumors and, what did they really bring across the table? All these things that go into, when you operate in secrecy. As an organization, this was never done in the past. It was a negotiating committee. JCBA started this type of secrecy. Maybe this is something that the IM does. I don't know. They got a completely different structure where their district and their international handle, most of the business. But it's not the way the TWU works, and it's not the way that the association constitution says. So we did not sign up with the association to basically mold into the IAM methods. So it's not a question of, it's more of a demand that we will be in the room.
Okay, that's good. So the other question I would have, and the question that's been brought up a lot by a lot of members, is the letter said that the extension would encompass economic. I guess I'll ask who can answer this question the best. What does that actually mean?
So what we were told was economics would mean wages, and that is because that's how the company defined it. And I know, Pete, you and I have had some conversations with some management, and they're definitely not defining it as wages. They would like to get into conversations on other things, but until we get some kind of clear guidance from leadership, I would go with right now it is wages. I know our members are, there's a lot of them, and I'm hearing from them consistently. There's economic things that they'd like to see addressed, like a retiree medical, like a 401k boost. There's, we got a lot of members that are in very high cost areas that would like to see something that addresses those high cost areas. And interestingly enough, I mean, we got to an agreement with our committee on a proposal to help those folks. Another one inside of this that we need to talk about, crew chiefs. I mean, you can't get crew chiefs as a result of the acceptance of the Javits recommendations by the association. So we need to find a way to make it financially worth them, foregoing some seniority when they're on the B team in the pecking order. So I can tell you what they said. I can tell you what I also hear in the background. But we need to actually get into more than just wages, is my opinion.
Absolutely. And, going around the country with our quarterly meetings and meeting with members whenever we can, it's a resounding, echoing cry every time. Don't just talk about the dollars and cents. You got to fix a lot of the other issues that are going on. From absolutely the Javits challenge is one of those that we looked at, and building in some form of regional value for those high cost areas was really critical. And as a committee, Mike, Gary, and myself, that was one of the things that we really pushed hard for, was to have the committee understand that this is something that needs to be done and that we found is already in the industry that we can leverage here.
And I would just add one more on that. Most people will never think of this as an economic article, but Pete mentioned early on of the grievance process and the inability to really enforce this contract based on the lack of arbitration dates. If you look at what the APFA just did, they now have 2 dates a quarter guaranteed to arbitrate. And how that ties to economics is, and a great example is the bases doing the field trips. So we just dealt with 3 months or 2 months straight, company violating a contract, taking money out of our members' pockets, and we can't get the economic fix to that by, because we can't get the arbitration. So, I mean, there is a tie-in with the grievance process itself. If we can get that fix, it will end up putting more money in our members' pockets.
Okay, so going back to the meeting, so the company presents the extension, economic extension to the association, goes to the committee. Supposing the committee says it's good enough to go to the membership for a vote. Let's just say, supposing the membership votes no, what happens then?
So in that instance, and this is hypothetical at this point in time, since we obviously haven't seen a proposal from the company, but at that point in time, if the committee looks at the proposal from the company, the negotiating committee sits back for those 4 contracts and says, yeah, this doesn't meet our expectations. At that point in time, it would then be our job to do one of 2 things: go back to the company and say, this doesn't meet our expectations for an economic package. Or if it's that bad, frankly, at that point, we would have to have that conversation with our membership saying, we believe that the best course of action would then be to go into full-blown Section 6 negotiations instead of bringing it back. Will that happen? We can't tell. Gary, did I miss anything on that?
No, and that's also goes back to your original question of making sure that we're actually in the room so we know what's exactly coming across, and asking those questions along with the secondary questions versus having this go-between and a lot of the frustration that we deal with right now of, he said, she said. No, I'd rather just tell you exactly what was said.
Yeah, I think that's very important. So we talked about a lot of things today. We talked about what could happen, into the extension. A lot of questions being asked. So, in closing, I think we'll just go around and see. Mike, do you have any closing statements that you would like to?
Just wait and see what the company proposes and go from there.
Us?
Yeah, from my point of view, for Local 591, I can assure you that these 3, without question, are just going to continue on pushing to be in the room, pushing the best in the best interest of our members. And without question, what we see and what we hear at that point in time, we will be bringing back to the membership the information, because that's what we do. We're all about making sure we have a well-informed membership. That's why we put the economic charts out and the medical benefit charts out. We're not trying to hide anything. All we want to do is give you, the member, the opportunity to make the best, most informed decision possible with whatever comes back, whether it be an economic extension, some hybrid from negotiations, or full-blown negotiations.
So one thing I would add to what Mike and Russ was speaking to here. So, I mean, you do need to familiarize yourself with those wages. Also familiarize yourself with, at a minimum, the plus 3%. We've all been promised it. It's something that they can't take back their promises. So get familiar with that. Now, the one thing that we really need to keep an eye on is what United Airlines is doing, because they are going through negotiations right now. They turned down that number. If we need to put a higher number on the board than them, but we know how pattern bargaining works. They're going to leapfrog us. So if we end up getting a percentage over, our competitors, we need to maintain that percentage by having a Me Too clause that maintains that, whatever United gets, that we go back above them. With that said, the perfect example of a Me Too clause is the over $1 billion one that this company just gave to our pilots last year. Pilots got to a contract, got to a tentative agreement. We're getting ready to vote. There they are. They're voting. They stopped the voting, said, until you give us a Me Too clause to what United just agreed to, we're not going to vote on it. So, there is an example out there, and it's an example that's not even a year old that we can use. So, best in the industry plus, percent, I'm going to leave to people that need to think about it themselves. My percent might be a lot higher than your percent, but you got to look at the minimum, and I mean absolute minimum of the 3%.
That's what Doug and Robert
that's
promised.
what they've promised us over and over again. And that's from a perspective, you got to look at that from minimum. The other thing, we talked about the medical parity. I hear from a lot of folks out there that this economics needs to include something that puts the same dollar value that folks that have the PPO 80 or 90 in your pocket when you get home. And the last one I'll touch on, this costs absolutely nothing. This is a freebie for the company. Early openers. So if we're going to extend a contract out from March 26th to 2025 to say March 26th to 2027, it costs them nothing to start early openers 18 months out. So basically a year from next month, this is August that we're filming this, a year from next month that we start negotiations. So we can get done in a timely way, timely manner. So we're not dragging things out for years. Heck, we might even get done before the 18 months if we put our minds to it and, really, put a lot of effort into it. So those are the things I would leave everybody on. Definitely, please get this video out. And, also, please circulate the wage charts, the medical charts, so everybody knows, everybody's informed. And thanks, Pete, for doing this.
All right, thank you, guys. And one other quick question that we have that just came to mind when you spoke about openers and negotiating even after the extension if it gets passed. So the work that the committee has done, I know Russ is the keeping track of all the work that you have been. Could you explain about? Could that also pick up right where you guys left off? Or?
Yeah, I'll explain that in a little more detail. So every one of the documents that we've created is timed. And what I mean by that is MLS Article 9, filling of vacancies. We spent a lot of time on filling of vacancies for all 4 contracts and on multiple dates, whether it was in Charlotte, Pittsburgh, Dallas, Chicago, you name it. I think we've been there. And every time we open the document and change a provision within it, we renamed the document with a new date, the date that we modified it. So we have a progressive record of everything that we've done, changing that document moving forward. And the value here is, in the old days, they get done with a contract, they have 15, 20 volumes sitting on a shelf up in the corner. And if you need to look anything up, well, you better have some time on your hands, because it's one of those things where you have to go through the first book, go through the article. They don't do them all in order every time. That type of thing happens. Well, this time it's all digital. Every one of the negotiating committee members has every copy of every document that we modified and every document that we referenced. So if we looked at the pilots or the flight attendants or another airline, aircraft mechanic, or MLS contract, we grabbed that document. It was shared with the entire committee. If we get this extension, if this happens, and we have early openers like Gary and Mike and I are discussing and hope to get to, if all that occurs next September, we should already be meeting as a negotiating committee before that and be ready at day one to hit the ground running with a comprehensive, if not full text all the way through the document proposal for all 4 books, handed across, and let's get this ball rolling and get it done in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you for that. And I appreciate it. Thank you to all 3 of you. And thank you to all our membership. So we look forward for good times, and thanks for watching.
All right. Thank you.
Stay safe out there.